Ma'am, I fully acknowledge the investment this committee has made in shipbuilding, and the challenge is our department under the previous administration squandered a lot of that.
Please, I know. I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You can talk percentages, you can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
A member of Congress was forced to sit across from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense of the United States, and practically plead with him for a plan, not classified details, and not state secrets. Just a clear plan in writing with real numbers and actual costs laid out on paper. And Hegseth sat there in front of the very committee that funds the entire military and had absolutely nothing to offer. Nothing at all, as he himself admitted. And this is the man in charge of the Pentagon. This is the man responsible for sending American soldiers into war. And now Democrats in the House have reached their limit, as 5 articles of impeachment have officially been introduced against Pete Hegseth, including charges of war crimes, abuse of power, obstruction of Congress, and mishandling classified information. And this is not some simple protest or political noise. This is a serious legal move. And if you go back and watch that hearing carefully, you can clearly see exactly how things reached this point.
Submarines, critical investment for national security and for the economy of my home state of Connecticut. This is a yes or no question, Mr. Secretary. Do you agree that continued investment in the Department of Defense in submarine production is in fact critical to the United States national security and military readiness?
Very critical.
Okay. So yes, thank you. And we agree. They'll continue to be a critical asset to deter adversaries, sustain the advantage we have in undersea domain, and the Defense Department should continue to support these programs. What is the status of the department's investments in submarine programs?
14% increase in FY26 on the Columbia, and a substantial increase in the Virginia as well. So we're ensuring a submarine industrial base that has been left behind, that has been neglected, is fully invested.
We have funded the submarine base.
Funding the submarines.
More than half, and you can go back to last December, but I want to move on. Do you know where our submarine production currently stands, and whether current production is sufficient to bridge the gap between current fleet size and projected need?
There is a gap, but we believe we are closing it, ma'am. Yes.
And if you can get to us the information about how, in fact, that you can close that gap, because we do not have any information or data that can substantiate what you're saying. Your department's initial budget proposal includes incremental funding for the Columbia-class submarine. Is that going to raise alarm bells across the defense industrial base by signaling a lack of commitment to the program?
No, we could not, ma'am. We could not be more committed to Columbia. The centrality in the triad, ensuring it delivers on time, it's central to the deterrent and the base of the United States. So
do you know how much of a financial hole this will create for the defense industrial base? Will there be a financial hole for the defense industrial base in 2026?
Certainly not based on our projections. There is not a hole. We're investing in Columbia robustly.
Okay, without numbers, it's my understanding the department is planning to move $3.1 billion for the Columbia class from 2026 and spread it over 2027 and 2028. This creates a serious problem for industry in the short term and hampers shipbuilders' ability to reach an adequate production rate. Have you been in contact with Electric Boat or with Huntington Ingalls about your plans?
Almost every day, our Deputy Secretary of Defense, alongside our Secretary of the Navy, are actively engaged with all of our shipbuilders and shipyards to make sure their needs not only are being met, but their shortfalls are being addressed so that we can close that gap in real time, which has existed.
So that you can really lay out for us the information and what we would like to get, what this committee needs to take a look at, because I know you believe that submarines are important, as I do, but getting the specific information about where we stand, what the production rate is, what gaps there may be. We're willing to listen to all of that because, in fact, in contrast to what your earlier statement was, we have, in fact, supported mightily the submarine industrial base from this committee. That has not been neglected. Do you have a plan for making the investments necessary to ramp up submarine production to the necessary elections? I would just tell you, as part of the December continuing resolution, Congress included $5.7 billion for the department to put on contract for 2 additional Block 4 and 1 Block 5 Virginia-class submarines. The Navy advised members that these funds were required to be placed on contract by February of 2025. Yet the department did not put funding for the 2 additional Block 4 boats on contract until April 30th. So do we have a plan? Do you have a plan for making the necessary investments to ramp up submarine production to the necessary levels? And what is that plan?
Ma'am, first of all, I want to thank this committee for the flexibility alongside FY25 and the continued resolution.
Well, I would hope you would thank this committee for the funding that it had made. We have made a serious investment. So your first statement is inaccurate. We have focused squarely on submarines, and we're now want to know where that is going and what your plan is for the continued advancements to meet production levels and make sure that that is an area that's covered for our national security.
Ma'am, I fully acknowledge the investment this committee has made in shipbuilding, and the challenge is our department under the previous administration squandered a lot of that.
Please, I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You could talk percentages. You can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
Congresswoman, we have the details and we will provide them.
Then let's have them before and my hope is that we could get to it before we go to a markup within a few hours.
Let's start with what Rosa DeLauro revealed in that room because it matters right now. As she questioned Pete Hegseth about submarines, which are critical national security assets and a key part of the nuclear triad. And he told Congress that the industrial base had been neglected. But DeLauro immediately shut that down and said his statement was inaccurate, explaining that this committee has invested heavily in the submarine industrial base. And she was right, because Congress, through the December continuing resolution, put $7 billion forward for the Navy's Virginia-class submarines, including Block 4 and Block 5 boats, and the Navy told lawmakers those funds needed to be placed under contract by February 2025. But Hegseth's Pentagon missed that deadline by 2 full months. 2 months on a contract tied to American submarines that are meant to counter China. And he still sat there claiming progress was being made. While she asked for a plan, she asked for numbers, and she asked for clear financial details before the committee moved to markup. And Hegseth said they had the details and would provide them. But when the hearing actually happened, he showed up without them. And that was not a one-time mistake. That was part of a pattern. And then the focus shifts to Iran, where the situation becomes far more serious. Because on February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, a joint strike campaign targeting Iran. And Hegseth described it as bold and brilliant, standing at a Pentagon press conference and saying Tehran had been embarrassed and humiliated, while Donald Trump claimed things were going unbelievably well. But then the Defense Intelligence Agency released a classified preliminary report stating the strikes had reacted by attacking the press, telling reporters to wave American flags, accusing them of having anti-Trump sentiment in their DNA, and demanding that journalists celebrate the strikes instead of reporting on them, which is what happens when a former Fox News anchor is placed in charge of the most powerful military in the world, as he tries to treat war like a television segment. And while he was demanding praise, American service members were dying, with 13 killed and more than 500 wounded, including 6 killed in a single drone strike on Port Shuaba in Kuwait, where Iranian drones broke through American air defense systems and hit a tactical operations center, and the Pentagon failed to properly reinforce the bases, as current and former defense officials confirmed that US troops had to retreat from military bases to hotels and office buildings across the region, because those bases were not secure, with locations in Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the UAE all targeted. And despite this, Hegseth stood at a press conference and claimed there were 0 American casualties, even though the defense casualty analysis system recorded 13 deaths, meaning he misled the country, the families, and the public. And now impeachment articles are outlining the reasons why. Starting with gross negligence in handling classified information tied to a signal, he added a journalist into a group in which Hegseth was discussing live strike operations against the Houthis, sending sensitive military details through a commercial app to a reporter without facing consequences. Followed by the second article accusing him of obstructing congressional oversight by withholding key facts about civilian casualties in Iran and Venezuela, preventing Congress, which funds the military, from understanding what actions he was ordering troops to carry out. And the third article focusing on Venezuela, where in September 2025 Hegseth reportedly authorized strikes on small boats in the Caribbean without warning, without boarding, and without attempts to intercept, with orders described by multiple sources as "kill everyone." And one of those boats was believed by legal experts to be carrying migrants rather than smugglers, traveling from Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago, and incapable of reaching the United States without multiple refueling stops. Yet all evidence was destroyed after the strike. And the fourth article addresses retaliation against Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain, for reminding service members that they have the legal right to refuse unlawful orders, with Hegseth targeting a sitting senator for stating a basic legal principle. And the fifth article accuses him of abusing his authority to influence military decisions for improper reasons. And during all of this, Hegseth was also dismantling key structures within the Pentagon, including eliminating the Director of Operational Test and Evaluation Office, an office that had existed for over 40 years after being created by Congress in a 91-5 bipartisan vote to ensure weapons actually function before being used in combat. And despite warnings from senators that removing it would put service members at risk, he still shut it down, while also firing multiple senior military leaders, including Army Chief of Staff George, Air Force Lieutenant General Jennifer Short, and Admiral Alvin Halsey, the commander of U.S. Southern Command, forcing him into early retirement and removing any senior officer who pushed back, raised concerns, or questioned decisions, before telling hundreds of generals and admirals in a speech that they should resign if they disagreed with his vision, a speech that senior officials later described as embarrassing and a waste of time. And then he followed that by flying in an F-18 jet, presenting himself like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, while announcing more lethal strikes, which brings everything back to the moment when Rosa DeLauro was simply trying to get a basic submarine plan from him, as Congress has been trying to hold him accountable, while even Donald Trump now appears to be creating distance. With midterm elections approaching and public support for the Iran conflict declining, as analysts pointed out that Trump began emphasizing Hegseth's role in the Iran decision rather than his own, signaling a shift in responsibility. And when leadership starts pointing fingers, it usually means consequences are coming, and Rosa DeLauro did not just ask for a plan, she issued a warning when she said, "Give us the details, or we may reconsider what you need to do to move forward." But he provided nothing. And now the consequences are here in the form of impeachment articles, allegations of war crimes, reports of dead soldiers, hidden casualties, a weakened military command structure, and a conflict that intelligence officials say barely impacted Iran's nuclear program despite public claims from the Pentagon, raising serious questions about whether Pete Hegseth was ever qualified for the role, as he came from a background as a Fox News host with limited military management experience and was placed in charge of a force of over 3.5 million people. And instead of strengthening leadership, he removed experienced voices, silenced dissent, and sent troops into dangerous safety, leaving 13 dead and more than 500 wounded, while still publicly claiming there were 0 casualties. And now the pressure is building as Congress is being pushed to act, the Senate is being urged to demand answers, and the American public is being asked to understand who was leading the Pentagon during these events, because he asked Congress for flexibility, and they gave it to him. But in return, he provided no plan, no clear numbers, and no truth. And now accountability is